Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. DUANE the Great Writer and Seer.
In this real side experience, I would be participating in the events as they unfolded, as opposed to merely observing from the real awareness position and view, aside from the simulated rollout of what is taking place. We each are this real awareness, isness, everything, reality, and everything that permeates through all consciousness, as the ideas contained within a consciousness effects into all expression of simulated form, feature, body type, and situation. From this real awareness perspective, everything transpiring in the creational simulators is available within its nowness, everything reality, and the personal selves can be shown anything that makes sense to be revealed to it, aside from the simulation of what is being presented as though watching a movie of events without our interjection, where insertion is necessary when the real awareness places a simulated form within the experience, is where we seek to attempt to alter what is occurring within it by redirecting agreement essentially, as it is the idea agreements which are the foundation, the causes of the simulated situations being effected. We cannot force alteration in the affairs of others, as all participating in the situations being revealed to us are the architects of that which they are experiencing. For we cannot experience anything absent of deciding, holding to the ideas as created by ourselves, or those as created by others we agree with, that manifest then our circumstances. The only recourse available to one seeking to alter the simulated situations of others is to then present their own created ideas, that if accepted and agreed with, so will an alternative state of experiential affairs be so, or to make apparent to the participants as to the ideas that are affecting their current circumstances, and perchance facilitate in their release or removal, again a choice and decision that is theirs alone to make. A guide, for example, can remove tap lines, but cannot violate the free will of the tap-lined individual if they are adamant in their retention. A natural tap-line relinquishing a process that takes place anyway, should an individual be undertaking their all-is recognizing journeys, as it entails a facing and releasing of all idea agreements, including those that are effecting as unsavory experience restriction. In order that we can be the delivery mechanism of exacted change, we must present a form that the participants of the simulated experience can relate to and engage with, that we can present our alternative ideas, or assist in the dismantling of the ideas effecting what is taking place, again as we glean the requisite agreement that we can perform such action, hence the necessity of the insertion of a simulated form as animated by the real awareness. Sometimes we may simply be operating through one of our many multi-dimensional consciousness-affected vehicles or aspects already as a part of the experiential affair, or we may view through the body form of one of the participants, and indeed commandeer it momentarily that we can bring about the alteration we seek. This would not be possession, as may seem to be suggested, for as I mentioned, animating through all consciousness-affected form is this isness, everything, real awareness reality, and from that position there is no separation in actuality, no sense of apartness, as would be so from the personal self's perspective. It is simply the isness playing simulated games with itself. But as the personal selves flounder through a creation disconnected from the reality of themselves, the real awareness isness, their consideration is that of being separate from all other body types, as visually this would seem to be the case, according to the simulation being experienced. And so, at any moment, can the real awareness isness take control of any simulation operating a body type, if it makes sense to do so, and orchestrate its action in ways more conducive for the benefit of life and awareness. Or we may simply project a body form into the experience that isn't as a part of it, considered by the participants very often as an outsider or interloper, which may not always be the best option therefore, as we then have to deal with rebuttal, suspicion, scorn, and animosity. And so the preference in this real side experience would be either of the two first options, I'm uncertain as to which, that the form I was operating as was one of my myriad of multi-dimensional aspects or vehicles, or that I was animating a body type that was one of the participants. But were you to watch the movie World of Warcraft, the orcs that featured would be a very close approximation appearance-wise. Interestingly, I have seen this particular form once before, on a previous real side experience I shared, where revealed was a potential overall humanity future view, where a cataclysmic, globally impacting event had taken place, and the humans that had endured were surviving with a race of body types not indigenous to the earth that resembled these orc-like beings. And in this current real-side experience, I would be animating through one of these very orc-like body types. In the previous cataclysm experience, nothing was revealed as to how these orc body forms came to be sharing humanity's plight, as the means by which they had become embroiled was never revealed, but they were an amiable species, and would associate and be surviving with the humans that remained. I speculated, though couldn't substantiate the idea, that in that previous experience and potential future happenstance, that the alien Armada had failed in its objective, that it had been repelled from the Earth by the dark forces, but that some of its ships had been blasted from the skies, rendering the orc species as being marooned on the Earth and experiencing with the humans then the dark force instigated global catastrophes that ensued. In this recent experience, the only impression as to my current creational position was that, although the scenery had similarities to the Earth, it was somewhat removed from it, and my location was where a population of these orc-like beings resided. For indeed I would be in the presence of another of my orc kind, though impressions did reveal the individual accompanying me was in actuality an acquaintance of mine from my physical level current lifetime, an individual that I have associated with for many lifetimes, as has been revealed to me, and where we have had the previous incarnational tendency to operate in somewhat dubious positions and dark force-orientated circles, making less than admirable life choices, etc. And although, as we now find ourselves as human, physical level speaking, he expresses little interest in the real purpose of his recognition on the physical level, the real side, however, is a different matter, and where he has involved himself with a number of assignments, as I have shared over the years, an individual I always refer to as a Troy, although this isn't his actual name, as I endeavour to maintain his anonymity. We would traverse the landscapes always on what appeared to be motorbikes of a kind, though of a very sophisticated futuristic, in relation to the human versions, variety and design. What was taking place in our creational position would be a dark force incursion, though one that was not outwardly obtrusive or apparently abrasive, more along the lines of a marketed idea being presented that, although seemed beneficial on the surface, was in reality anything but. Agents of the dark forces had established checkpoints and declared the necessity of administering shots that were being presented as miracle cures for any illness or ailment imaginable, even body disfigurations. There would be seemingly little or no consideration as to the possibility of deception. The other experienced participants, those also present in this creational location, were willingly subjecting themselves to what was marketed as a cure-all for any and all affliction. In reality, impressions would reveal that what was contained within the syringes would be a mechanism of control, perhaps a nanobot concoction, but the specifics of the contents was never made apparent. Interestingly, although these orc body types are featured in the dimensional position as presented in this experience, they coexisted with body forms that were human, and seemed to be in peaceful collaboration with them, although there was a markable variance in size between the two species, and where the humans were never completely comfortable therefore in the presence of any orc. The dark force agents, those delivering the miracle cures, would be human also in appearance. Troy and myself, as a part of the orc species, seemingly were the only ones realizing as to the deception taking place, as I was receiving impressions revealing the reality of the situation, and Troy was following my lead, so to speak. We would travel to the various checkpoints established, where the Dark Force characters were delivering their miracle shots, and attempt to dissuade all present, human and orc alike, as to their dubious contents, that they were far from what they were marketed to be. Our efforts fell on deaf ears. All would be eager to accept the miracle cures. There even would be present a human absent of legs, and promised was a miraculous restoration of his limbs through the receiving of the miracle cure's contents. As the only ones challenging this operation, we were met with scorn, ridicule, and indignation, and indeed the Dark Force agents at one of the checkpoints we frequented would attempt to forcibly inject us. We would resist, one of the syringes would shatter, and its contents would come alive, as though sentient. A glowing fluid that crawled over and encased my forearm, and where it was rather a painstaking task to remove it, suggesting that very likely what the shots contained was indeed nanotech based. This didn't seem to sway the vast majority of the orcs and humans present, but for a few notable exceptions, who would join Troy and myself, and we would vacate the checkpoint, barging through the Dark Force agents as they attempted to prevent our departure. The scene would skip, and although, experience-wise, a moment had elapsed, from the simulated side, a certain duration of time had passed by. The Dark Forces no longer were present within the dimensional position we were in. They had withdrawn for whatever reason, the supposition that either they had completed their operation of nanobot administering to their satisfaction, or perhaps had been repelled by resistance, as Troy and myself had continuously made it our business to enlighten the orcs and humans as to the Dark Force deception. For indeed, in this scene, Troy and myself, still in our orc alternative forms, were now a part of a large group of those also in realization of the Dark Force's nano-injecting agendas. Impressions revealed that it was those that hadn't received the nano-concoction that were congregating here. Those that had were left to their own devices, and whatever effect would be theirs to experience as a consequence of accepting the miracle cures. And now the group, Troy and myself, would be looking skyward in readiness for the unfolding of an impending event, and moments later would the skies above begin to fill with vast numbers of spacecraft of various design, as we were witnessing the arrival of the alien Armada. Over the years, I and others have been relatively constant in our revealing of an impending initiative, that of a conglomeration of various alien species that have formulated an armada, a vast fleet of their respective ships, with the intention of a mass arrival to the earth made apparent for all of humanity. For the view, as afforded me, since childhood in fact, always has been of the skies above my street, filled with the assorted craft of the Armada, an event centuries in the making, and where the skies over every earth continent will be filled with the ships, when and if this event comes to pass. The various species of the Armada are embracing of their awareness processes, and as part of their contribution in regards to benefiting life, as arranged by the guides and DUANE, and assisted by the new friends that it can be executed, will be to ideally not only make their armada present for all of humanity to see, but to bring humanity into their awareness becoming a confederation of a species. Naturally, there are many variables. The Dark Force controllers, the Armada aliens, and humanity are integrated into this potential unfolding scenario, and according to the agreements that interlock all involved, will dictate the affected simulated outcome. It's a case then of attempting to smooth the road for the Armada that the ideal scenario can occur, to manage the ideas underlying the simulation, to remove where able those that present as detracting from this ideal outcome. For I have been shown the various versions and variations that this event may take, the extent by which it can be successful, or the degree by which the dark forces can sabotage or even completely prevent it, all according to agreement as I mentioned, but my recent real side experiences have been as constant verifications that the alien armada is on track, and this experience would be further indication that this is so. This event is set to take place on the Earth, and yet in this experience would this armada be featuring in the skies above the creational spot I and my group were positioned within, the position where orcs and humans resided. The skies were, however, not only filled with the various armada ships, but additionally would the land masses of the Earth be featuring. Troy would point skyward as a selection of ships were flying in proximity to the land mass that was Italy, and now it would be made apparent as to where in creation we were. As I mentioned earlier, the scenery was similar to Earth, but the sense of our position being somewhat removed from it, and the presence of humans as being one of the species participating, was an additional hint. I revealed on a previous real side experience the presence and verification of the hollow Earth where humans resided, though those of a far more advanced technological standing than humans that dwell on the planet's surface. A proportion of the human race that escaped one of many Dark Force-instigated Earth resets by securing themselves beneath the surface within the hollow Earth, and retained therefore the technology that the entirety of humanity once boasted prior to the reset, and where, as the surface was re-established, so what was rebuilt from the ashes was a regression from humanity's former technological standing, despite what the official controller provided history of humanity's timeline might suggest. In that experience, so the Dark Forces had elected to eradicate the hollow Earth humans, and an evacuation to the Earth's surface was deemed necessary. In this current experience, then, the land masses of the Earth's surface were visible at a high elevation in the skies above, that although a rock should separate and obscure such a view, perhaps this was an additional feature of the experience to ensure my realization that we were in fact stationed within the hollow Earth once again, or maybe some technology or other renders the land masses of the surface as visible in the skies, irrespective of the rock that separates the hollow Earth from the surface. Within the hollow Earth, then, there seems much by way of a variation of civilization, and indeed a species, including regions where these orc body forms coexist with humans, but where superior technology compared to the surface is a constant. The advanced motorbike-style vehicles Troy and I were utilizing as an example, suggesting the evacuation of the inner Earth experience view occurred at a point prior to the Armada event, where the dark forces decided to destroy the hollow Earth, including the humans and assorted body types and species residing within it. Very likely then, in that potential scenario, perhaps the dark forces continued with their destruction and wrought cataclysms upon the entirety of the Earth, the surface included, in a preventative measure that the Armada event may be curtailed. This would shed light on the previous experience I mentioned earlier in regards to the presence of the same orc beings I had encountered that were surviving with the remaining humans, their origins now determined, that they must have also evacuated the hollow Earth to evade being caught in its destruction, only to be embroiled in the cataclysms the dark forces instigated on the Earth's surface. And due to the situation in that potential overall humanity scenario, were the Armada unable to execute their objective, as agreements dictated their inability to carry out their assignment, but effected were circumstances as desired by the darker forces. The hollow Earth evacuation experience and the cataclysmic view from months earlier, featuring the orc beings surviving with the remaining humans, were interconnected then, scenes from the same potential occurrence. In reality, every effect eventuality manifested from the idea agreements in consciousness is present in the nowness of the ears, but through a consciousness effected assimilation as afforded via the body forms, these ideas roll out gradually in a time-framed sequences, and only the ideas held in greatest prominence are those currently processing to physical level conclusion. But for an idea to reach its physical level culmination point, it must be held to in agreement prominence to its effect completion, or it is the equivalent of switching the movie prior to experiencing its end. And so agreement dictating the nature of the Armada event and what form it will take, if any, has been in flux. As we endeavour to attempt to manage the ideas, that effected is the ideal scenario, that of the event occurring, and humanity becoming part of the awareness confederation of alien species. And overall, the real side views have been leaning toward the ideal scenario, this current experience a further verification, that although the dark forces had attempted to cause disruption through a nanotech administering initiative, and by whatever mechanism they had been able to instigate such an operation, there would be no indication of the dark forces' intention or indeed agreement-based ability to destroy the hollow Earth civilization and species, and the Earth's surface additionally. The best the dark forces were able to achieve, where agreement parameters allowed, was to sabotage, on an individual basis, the ability of Earth's inhabitants to be a part of the alien Armada event. For indeed, only those having evaded the miracle cures were present with Troy and myself, and watching the unfolding Armada event as the various ships filled the skies, as though those infused with the nanotech were somehow removed from being part of the Armada event, and as I mentioned, it was as though the dark forces had withdrawn, as though agreements dictated their inability to further feature in humanity's affairs those of the hollow Earth or the surface. The only damage they were able to instigate was through the miracle cures programs, which in some way displaced those out of phase with the Armada event scenario, as though a subtle shift into an alternative dimension, where for those displaced there, the Armada event doesn't take place. For a number of previous real-side experiences I shared revealed this alien Armada event variable, that of only certain proportions of humanity able to experience this, and where, as a consequence, only a percentage of humanity were extracted from the Earth to join with the Armada, the rest seemingly inaccessible, through being dimensionally displaced, courtesy of the nanotech within the miracle cures, as indicated in this current experience. And there the scene would fade, and as agreements currently stand, so the Armada event is still on course, though perhaps only will be experienced by those that are positioning themselves aside from agreement with the dark force managed consciousness via the awareness process, or those that have evaded the various nanotech delivery mechanisms if they are personal self-immersed orientated individuals only. An Armada event that will involve not only the humans from the surface potentially, but include the assorted species present within the hollow earth, all according to what each individual decides in regards to allowing nanotech into their bodies, or indeed the decision to set intent with the all-is, which is a process of complete consciousness detachment regardless of the ideas present or that which bombards or has infested our body forms.
Kevin's latest experience, always wonderful. Yes, we're so grateful that Kevin is there as a great witness. It's very, very needed, so that people are given a heads up and they're not totally surprised and run around and wonder what the heck to do when this does happen. Again, the idea is that aliens are all bad, etc. Well, actually, we're all aliens, and there are a lot of bad, people on the earth, humans or whatever, with this little vegetable bodies we have. So again, it's all a enormous and many times crazy experience while we're here, because this is how we've been brought up, so we got to figure it out. So at least we have good references, real references to do that with. Yes, and thanks to Val and Ava and many others that step up and take the risk to share and take part in this, because that's how it works.